Is Justin Fields a tough call? Under normal circumstances at Detroit, no way would he be a tough call. Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold just scored 22 or more fantasy points against the Detroit Lions. But Dave Richard, you got a banged up Justin Fields who rushed for 11 yards last week. Is he a tough call? Start or sit?
I am absolutely starting Justin Fields. Indoors, no worries about the elements. Matchup is favorable, whether he throws it or runs it. I will take the over on 11 rushing yards. I think the conditions, plus the defense that he played, were pretty heavy factors in why he had such a rough game.
He's QB5 for me.
Be quick on this one. QB5 for you?
Yeah, he's better than that for me. QB4.
You guys going Joe Burrow against the Bills or Fields at the Lions?
Burrow.
I'm going with Burrow and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. But that's it. That's it.
All right. Tough call. Let's see. How about Tyler Allgeier? So I just, it's hard for a fantasy manager to buy into a guy that hasn't been a reliable starter this year, obviously, but he's emerging a bit. 17 and 18 carries in his last 2 games. I think if he gets that against the Cardinals, we're going to be pretty thrilled about it. The Cardinals have allowed 17 or more fantasy points in PPR to a running back in 9 of their last 10 games. Dave, is Tyler Allgeier a tough call?
I've got him outside of my top 24 as of now because there is still a Cordero Patterson problem. But Allgeier has played at least 48% of the snaps in 5 of his past 6, at least 11 touches in 4 of the past 6, at least 100 yards total in each of his past 2. A little bit worried about his role near the goal line. I think that still goes to Patterson, especially after Allgeier whiffed on multiple tries last week. But I think otherwise Algier's in a good position to get you north of 10 PPR points, maybe closer to 15. I think both running backs can have a pretty good game. I suspect that both of them will be ranked in my top 28 among running backs.
I think Allgeier might be a little bit of a tough call in full PPR because, he did have 5 targets last week, but the previous month he had 2 targets, and so you don't know what he's going to do in the passing game. But I would not be surprised at all if he runs for 150 yards in this game. The Cardinals' defense is an absolute dumpster fire. I don't think you see this trend towards the end of the year towards Allgeier with 35 carries over his last 2 weeks. And then in week 17, they decided to go back to the 30-million-year-old Cordero Patterson as the primary rusher. So I think
30 million years old.
I think you can count on 15 to 20 carries. You can probably count on a catch or 2. And I like his chances to get into the end zone. He's a must start in non-PPR. He's a low-end number 2 in full PPR.
Okay. Yeah, boy, you just never know. Sometimes these teams, they really confuse you with the way they use running backs week to week, like the Ravens, for example. But Allgeier's coming on, and also he had 3 carries. They were on the same possession. They were basically back to back inside the 5-yard line. And he didn't get in. He had a good chance on his second carry, but it seemed like he had the whole fell. But they did use him inside the 5-yard line on 3 straight carries. So that was good to see. And that was last week against the Ravens. He did pretty well against a really good run defense.
They've given
somebody asked me Allgeier versus Akers, and I was tossing and turning. I like Allgeier. What's that?
Allgeier.
What'd you say?
Akers.
Were you saying something, Heath?
I was trying to, but it's okay. We've moved on.
Okay. Josh Jacobs against the 49ers. There have only been 2 running backs who have scored more than 13.4 PPR fantasy points against the Niners. One of them is currently on the 49ers. He is Christian McCaffrey. Mm-hmm. Melvin Gordon is the other one.
Of course.
In his last 4 games, Josh Jacobs has 8 targets and 7 catches in his last 4 games. In the 4 games before that, he had 22 targets and 18 catches. Just target shares way down. Start or sit Josh Jacobs in the fantasy championship, Heath?
I'm not sitting the number 3 running back and leading rusher in the NFL, even if he's playing the 49ers. I'm not, like you can see here, I guess Dave and Jamie have downgraded him a little bit more, and he's outside of their top 12. I cannot imagine even considering sitting Josh Jacobs.
If you're loaded at running back, you can sit Josh Jacobs.
Why don't we take a look at must-start running backs? against the 49ers and what they've done. Some of them are more must-starty than others. David Montgomery, 17 carries, 8 fantasy points in PPR. Javonte Williams, 15 carries, 9 fantasy points. Christian McCaffrey, 14 carries, 7 catches, 23.4 fantasy points. Austin Eckler, 6 carries, 7 catches, 13 I'll just say the fantasy points. 13.3 points for Eckler. James Conner, 13.4. Alvin Kamara, 11. Leonard Fournette, 10.6. Rachaad White, 12.7. Ken Walker, 11.9. But none of these guys are Josh Jacobs. But obviously, I mean, this is an amazing run defense, best in football. No, Heath, come on.
No, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you? No. And I think you can look at it also like a lot of those names you gave. The key to Josh Jacobs' success is that he gets 90% of the team's rush attempts, and maybe they throw 1 or 2 passes to another running back. Like, he is fully dominating that backfield. And several of those guys that you gave had someone else who also scored fantasy points in that game. I mean, you look at Kenneth Walker had 11.9. Kenneth Walker and Travis Homer combined for 18.9. Rachaad White and Leonard Fournette combined for 23.3. Like, there are several instances where the running backs combined for much better days than the lead back did, and whatever Josh Jacobs does is what the Raiders running backs will combine for.
Sure, but if you look at the guys who are successful against the 49ers, it's almost always because they're catching passes. I don't know why that part of Josh Jacobs' game has been gone the last 4 games, but like I said, 8 targets, 7 catches in his last 4 games. If he's getting 2 catches in this game, I think he's going to suck against I think there's a good chance if he gets 2 catches in this game, he's going to need to score a touchdown, or else he's going to probably really let you down. That's the big concern I have. It's like I just wish I could rely more on him in the passing game right now. No, not feeling that.
I mean, it might be true, and there will be definitely players who have bad games in the fantasy championship, but I'm not sitting the number 3 running back in fantasy.
Okay, Dave, let's talk about Jerick McKinnon going up against the Broncos. I can't predict his role. I can't predict the catches. What do you think? Start or sit McKinnon?
I'm starting him. I still like the role that he's got. I know that last week was a little bit of a disappointment, but he still scored, gave you something. It was more of an even split in terms of overall snaps, but he played 7 of 12 on 3rd and 4th downs, 4 and 6 inside the 10. Completely happy to continue using him in PPR. He's on the right type of team. And I think the Broncos defense might be ready to just kind of pack it in a little bit. Maybe they start out hot and then eventually they realize, oh, we're playing against Patrick Mahomes. That's a really, really tough offense to deal with. And I think McKinnon can find his way to the end zone. Yet again, I think he can get you at least 3 catches. I like him better than Josh Jacobs this week. They are both number 2 fantasy running backs for me.
Okay, guys. Are you ready to have an awkward moment on the air?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, Heath, why don't you give your thoughts?
I just blew out my knee, so sure.
Heath, why don't you give your thoughts on Jerick McKinnon, and then we'll have an awkward moment on the air. Go ahead. Is he a tough call for you?
Yeah, he's a low-end number 2 running back. It was very disappointing that his usage did not continue last week, and he only had 8 touches against Seattle. And Isaiah Pacheco, his fumble is apparently forgotten because he was the clear lead rusher. I think there is significant risk. We basically seen a month from Clyde, a month from Hardman as this stupid red zone efficiency guy, and you don't know when that ride's going to end with McKinnon. You're starting him based on that, and the Chiefs are the right team to do that with. But he's not he's not a top 12 guy, certainly.
No, I agree with that. But he's close. And you got to love the role, and that's a team that should still put up plenty of points.
But you didn't love the role last week. He had 8 touches last week.
Yeah, that part stunk, but he still managed to get you double-digit PPR points.
The flukiest touchdowns with this guy. I mean,
well, not with this guy, with this offense.
Sure, I guess so. But all of his touchdowns, almost all of them, are like 10 or more yards. He's not that kind of player, But obviously, this offense puts you in those good positions. How's the connection? We good right now, or should I reset?
I think you're okay right now, but it's been a bad 48 hours for you.
I'm sick and tired of it. All right, let's try.
So you're the
Welcome
one
to my
world.
This is the pain that I was feeling.
Yeah, no, it's. I think it's me. I'm gonna have to restart my internet, but let's hope it doesn't come to that right now. So let's go to our next tough call, Ramondre Stevenson. So he's another, just like Josh Jacobs. Catches have been down. He has 2 catches in 3 straight games. One of them he left early, so it's really the last 2. He did have 5 targets against the Bengals. The Dolphins have a terrific run defense. Stevenson hasn't been a prolific rusher lately, as the Patriots have really struggled to maintain possession. They've had a few games lately with fewer than 24 minutes, 3 games lately, actually, with fewer than 24 minutes of possession. It's hard to run the ball when you're in that situation. Dave, against the Miami Dolphins, starter sit Ramondre Stevenson. Would you start Jerick McKinnon over him in PPR?
I would not. I'm still going to ride with Ramondre, who's getting a ton of work. This is all, first of all, you have to preface it by saying that we're assuming that Damian Harris is out again. So I'll start with that. If Harris is out, Ramondre had over 90% of the snaps last week, dominated, had literally every single touch on 3rd down, 4th down, inside the 10. He's playing a ton. So huge opportunity for him again. Dolphins have allowed 11 total touchdowns to running backs in their past 8 games. I would fully expect Ramondre to score and find his way to at least 70 total yards. I know that he hasn't been efficient lately, but I think he can still get you there. Hopefully he holds on to the football. To me, the issue is whether or not Damian Harris plays. If Harris plays, then that changes everything. And he might not even be any better than like a top 20-ish type of fantasy running back. Because now the Patriots have options with their run game. They can go back to Harris, who is theoretically less and can take a lot of work away from Ramondre Stevenson. Could be a deal where it's like 60% for Stevenson, 40% for Damian Harris, but they can both work any role, except for the 3rd down role, which would give Stevenson the nod, but still not somebody that you'd feel good about starting.
I think we might be overblowing Ramondre Stevenson's recent struggles, because if you look at the game log, there's some concern, but that week 14 game, he had 3 carries for 8 yards. So I don't think we're going to say he was inefficient in that game. He just got hurt 13 snaps into the game. He also had 3 targets on 13 snaps, which is pretty freaking awesome. The next week, he runs for 172 yards on 19 carries. Only played 66% of the snaps, his first game coming back from the injury. Last week, it was 91%. It was a great, great run defense. He wasn't good running the ball. But, still, over the last month, he's well over 5 yards per carry. And he's over 5 yards per carry in 3 of the 4 last complete games that he's played.
Well, the Dolphins' run defense has been really good lately. So I don't know. I mean, we just saw it against the Bengals, and he struggled, obviously. I mean, is he going to struggle again against the Dolphins? Does he need the pass-catching role? And what do you think about the Damian Harris factor too, Heath?
I would definitely lower him to the RB 20 to 24 range. I think he's a tough call if Harris plays, and he's not a tough call if he doesn't.
Okay.
Well said.
Dave, I know that Heath's answer is going to be Jacobs. If Harris does not play, would you start Ramondre Stevenson or Josh Jacobs?
Ramondre.
Okay. If Harris does play, would you guys start Ramondre Stevenson or Tyler Allgeier?
Probably Ramondre.
No. If Harris plays, I'd go Allgeier.
Okay. Let's talk about the Jacksonville wide receivers at Houston. You know the MO here. Teams run and run all day on Houston. Lawrence didn't, though. Way back in earlier in the season, the first meeting, Lawrence threw 47 passes, and he just stunk. And Marvin Jones had a huge game. He had 104 yards, but Kirk and Zay Jones had 11 and 12 yards. Evan Ingram had 69 yards on 10 targets. But do we go back to these wide receivers, Heath? Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. Last week, I think, was pretty excusable. Tough matchup, bad weather, short passes to Evan Ingram, not challenging the perimeter much at all. This week against Houston, what do you think? Do the Jaguars get that passing game going again? Do you start Christian Kirk and Zay Jones?
Neither of them are top 24 wide receivers. I favor Kirk over Jones, but I would be happy if I didn't have to start either one of them.
Wow, Dave?
I feel almost the exact same way. I do have Kirk as a top 24 receiver in full PPR, but trust is really the biggest issue here. And there are so many other interesting factors, including, as we've talked about twice already on the show, how much will the Jaguars offense actually be on the field? Because if they're up 21-3 or something like that, or if they're down 21-3, they'll pull all their starters because they know that their biggest game is next week, not this week. Makes me a little bit nervous to trust anybody in the passing game for Jacksonville.
So would you guys...
Makes me nervous to trust everybody except for Evan Ingram, to be honest with you.
Would you guys start Jahan Dotson and or Drake London over the Jaguars wide receivers?
I'm starting London over both in PPR. Probably London over neither in non-PPR. Dotson over Zay in PPR.
I think I have it Kirk, rookies, Zay.
Okay. And Amari Cooper, 6 catches for 72 yards on 10 targets against the Saints, who have a terrific pass defense, and that was really bad weather. Now he gets Washington. Not exactly a cupcake matchup here. Should be kind of probably a very run-heavy game. But it's a road game for Amari Cooper. Do you guys have him in your top 24, Dave?
I do not have him in my top 24. I would rather start Jahan Dotson, would rather start Christian Kirk, would rather start Drake London. I would rather start Stephon Diggs. I am nervous about Amari Cooper, although I have to admit he is getting closer and closer to connecting with Deshaun Watson. And I do feel like Watson, I haven't watched the game. I didn't do my homework assignment for you, Adam. It'll get done before Friday. I think that Watson is I think that they're getting close. I think this passing offense, especially now that they're out of it, it just would make perfect sense that this is when the Cleveland Browns start to really click.
Yeah, and I think Amari Cooper talked about that a little bit, how like that's one of the big focuses is that next year that connection is going to be so much better, and they're really kind of force feeding it at this point to work on it. And so I'm going to go with Cooper as a number 2. I would start him ahead of I think most of all the guys that Dave said, except for Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I definitely think there was a good connection. And I remember he, as Dave mentioned yesterday, he was wide open in the end zone, lost his footing, couldn't hang on to a ball. That was just blown coverage, but he could have had like 90 yards and a touchdown against the Saints instead of 6 catches for 72 yards. Watson's obviously had terrible numbers. I think he took a step in the right direction. It'll be interesting. It would be interesting if Cooper were playing well right now and then he had this road game, because then we could go back to the home road things. But right now, it's just been awful with Deshaun Watson in 4 games. But
well, he had 13.2 fantasy points last week.
Yeah. Overall, it's been awful. But last week was definitely a step in the right direction for Cooper. Garrett Wilson. All right, if I know Heath, this is not a tough call at all. Garrett Wilson is a must start.
Top 12 wide receiver.
Top what?
12.
Top 12. Wow, Dave, how about you for Wilson?
Don't have him top 12, but I do like him quite a bit. I have him 17th among wide receivers. I would start him ahead of pretty much every single receiver that we've talked about so far. The Jaguars guys, Drake London, etc. Just an awesome talent who's getting an upgraded quarterback, and it's not the easiest matchup in the world against Seattle. Get the idea of Tariq Woolen erasing him out of your mind, because Woolen plays one side of the field, and Garrett Wilson can line up anywhere the Jets want to put him.
Okay, but he typically lines up on that side of the field about 60% of the time.
Okay, well, that doesn't mean that he's going to do it in this game. I'm sure there will be snaps where he is lined up across from Tariq Woolen, but it's more about the scheme that they're facing and the coverage that they'll face more than it is the people who they'll face. All right, and I don't think in clutch time, if the Jets move Garrett Wilson to Mike White's right, or they move him into the slot, the Seahawks are finally going to say, all right, it's time to get you moving around, Tariq Woolen. Like, that seems like a tendency that we can bank on. Woolen playing to the quarterback's left. So I'm totally good with Garrett Wilson. I would expect him to get north of 15 PPR points.
Okay, in the last 7 games, look at what the Seahawks have done to number 1 receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, 4 catches, 36 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. Mike Evans, 5 for 54. I don't know if you want to consider him or Godwin. Godwin plays in the slot more often than Evans, obviously. Devontae Adams, 7 for 74 on 11 targets. DJ Moore, no catches. Brandon Ayuk, 2 for 19. Juju Smith-Schuster, 3 for 27. So that's Hopkins, DJ Moore, Ayuk, and Juju all under 40 yards. Evans with 54 yards. Devontae Adams, in the midst of his ridiculous stretch, went for 7 for 74 on 11 targets. They are 3rd best against wide receivers. So that's why I bring it up. Otherwise, it would be a no-brainer. I think part of the reason they're 3rd best is because teams run all over them, but I don't really think the Jets can do that. So that helps Garrett Wilson. But, okay, I'll just throw it one more time, Heath, since you have him in the top 12. Just told you what they've done against some pretty damn good receivers. That doesn't matter to factor in at all?
It doesn't matter to me. I think anybody but Zach Wilson is going to throw the ball 10 times a game to Garrett Wilson, and Garrett Wilson is a superstar who is a top 12 wide receiver as long as Zach Wilson is not his quarterback. They have had some good performances against some very good wide receivers. They've also given up some production against some very good wide receivers. I think he's going to score somewhere in the 15 to 20 fantasy point range this week.